Hi, everyone. So, if you're like most light workers and starseeds I know these days, you are weary of trudging along on your ascension path at this point, tired of having to deal with one thing after another coming up to resolve or heal within yourself, right? And probably disillusioned about how long and difficult the ascension process has turned out to be. Even knowing that this is what the current transitional times are all about, that we're in the process of shifting into a much higher frequency dimension, and we can't take our unresolved traumas, our low frequency emotions, and our karmic patterns with us, doesn't help a whole lot. We still have to deal with all the painful emotions that are now arising within us, all the stuff we've had to push down into our unconscious throughout our lives that was too difficult to deal with at the time. And it just has to finally come up now to be dealt with. So if you're someone who's been on a conscious ascension path for some time, you have undoubtedly been attempting to do everything you can to move through all the stuff that's coming up within you, right? You can't help but want to get on with it and get through this phase of releasing all this lower frequency stuff from inside you. You want to find a way to start living in the greater freedom and love of fifth dimensional consciousness that you've probably tasted more and more over time, but then seem to lose again. You long to experience more of the expansive joy that occasionally rises within you, giving you a preview of what life might be like at some point in the fifth dimension. But it can get so discouraging and exhausting. It can feel as if you're just kind of treading water at times, not seeming to get anywhere. You somehow manage to make it through one emotional challenge, and then the next one appears. Maybe you do feel each time as if you've actually healed from something important, and you probably have. But then, after just a bit of time, there's somehow more that always comes up that you have to deal with and resolve. It can just get so tiring. As I say, this seems to be par for the course at this point for many serious light workers I know. Low frequency stuff that's been buried in the unconscious can't go with us. And it just has to finally be seen and resolved as we continue rising in frequency on our path toward the fifth dimension. So it's all coming up now to be dealt with and released. And yet, you may suspect that there has to be something important to focus on, something to do that's different from how you've been approaching it. Something you're maybe missing to somehow get through it all the more quickly and easily so that your vibration will automatically rise faster and you'll be free from the pain and exhaustion you're experiencing. Well, perhaps in this attempt, you've practiced certain things you've read or heard about, like staying positive in your emotions and your thoughts as much as possible, or responding with love and light and gratitude to all situations you find yourself in, no matter how negative others around you might be. Or maybe you've taken the approach of focusing only on what you wish to manifest and not on what you don't want. Or you've attempted to be more service to others rather than service to self. Maybe you've gotten into things like plant medicine, or gone on retreats, or upped your meditation practice, or you've sought out healings from healers or teachers on the internet, or even learned and practiced new healing techniques yourself. Well, all these kinds of attempts can be useful, but really only up to a point. You can feel somewhat better, and healing occurs. But maybe you found that in the end, these practices alone are limited. Something does shift, but not totally. Or they may have kind of helped in the past, but somehow not any longer. you still don't feel very good about yourself at times. Your life still isn't working very well. You're lonely, you're tired, and sometimes you just want to give up. Now, if you're fortunate, perhaps you finally realized that there is one very important thing you need to learn how to do more of in order to heal yourself and evolve into a higher frequency. It's something that sounds very simple, really, very basic, but it's not. And that is to learn how to love yourself more, unconditionally, no matter what. It becomes obvious at some point that this is what is necessary. You just keep bumping up against the sense of feeling bad about yourself, and know that this is what is preventing you from shifting into a higher frequency and feeling freer and happier. Yet you may then still feel stuck, asking, but how do I learn to love myself better? What do I need to do? I've tried so many things. As I say, it can sound simple, but often it's not. Because you may think there are certain things about yourself that you simply can't love. And in fact, you can't even accept them. Whether it's certain emotions you feel, unhealthy patterns you have, parts of your personality you just don't like, or actions from the past you can't forgive yourself. There's just no way you can learn to love these things about yourself. Or if you're really honest with yourself, you might even find there is simply a general sense of dislike or hatred you sometimes feel for yourself for no particular reason. Does any of this sound familiar to you? Now, you might be aware that this negative sense you feel against yourself is due to something that's been called the inner critic. You realize that this is a part of you that causes you to feel judgmental of yourself and then to feel a sense of guilt or shame or self-hatred. Perhaps you've worked with this in the past in the variety of ways certain psychological approaches have suggested, and it felt somewhat better. But then you realize that, in the long run, it never seems to truly work for any length of time. You become aware that the negative messages continue to plague you, sometimes even over small, unimportant issues. At times there may not even be a sense that there's a negative voice or particular criticism in your mind, but there's just a feeling of shame and worthlessness or self-hatred that keeps running through your body. And no matter how rational you try to be about it all, there's still always the niggling sense that you are feeling criticized and feeling worthless for good reason, that there is something inherently wrong with you, something you need to fix and change because you are intrinsically flawed or bad. And therefore, as a responsible, caring person, you feel you have to change. You need to grow, and you need to become more spiritual. Or maybe you have to somehow pay for what you've done or felt. You deserve to feel bad. You have to fix what's wrong. And if enlightenment or ascension is a goal you have, in order to reach this state of consciousness, you need to keep working on what's wrong with you and fix it. Purify yourself. Maybe lifetime after lifetime. You need to heal. You need to keep struggling against your imperfections. You are never okay just as you are. Now this can be a very subtle process that takes place within you. Something so familiar and automatic that you don't even catch it when it's happening. But if you are attentive, you can become aware of it and then learn to do something about it. And that's what I'm going to describe to you here. So, the first thing you can do is to understand what this inner critic giving you these messages is. It is not inherently a part of who you naturally are as a human being. It can certainly feel like it is. It's been with you forever. but it is actually something foreign. It's a type of very advanced AI technology that many thousands of years ago was programmed into the human brain and also into the Earth grid by certain ancient races that had come to Earth to experiment on humanity. And it emits a programming or a frequency signal that is designed to weaken you and feel separate from who you actually are as a high-frequency, multidimensional being of light. Some sources have called this frequency wetiko, or a type of mind virus. Others describe it as an energetic implant attached to the brain on the etheric level. However it's described, it is something foreign that emotionally and mentally attacks humanity from the inside of the body and mind with negative frequencies. Now, this idea may seem too foreign or weird for you to consider. If so, it doesn't matter. Just kind of be open to the possibility that this is what the inner critic actually is, and see if it doesn't eventually make sense to you. In any case, I think it's easy to see that the inner critic is not something that benefits you. In fact, if you consider it, you can realize that when you've listened to it, it has probably significantly held you back in your spiritual growth and evolution. It is not designed to help you grow and become a more spiritual person. In reality, it has contributed to keeping you weak, fearful, ashamed, and guilty, and disconnected from Source. It is so powerful and cleverly designed, it's very difficult to not simply believe what it tells you about yourself and how it makes you feel. It's important to understand this reality that humanity has had to deal with for thousands of years on this planet. And if this is new to you, it's probably somewhat scary to even consider. But do be aware that this technology is currently weakening dramatically as the Earth and humanity continue to rise in vibration. The frequency of this technology and of those who have created it, and some of them are still here with us on the planet, is only fourth dimensional. So they will not be able to follow us with their technology into the fifth dimension. It's a matter of time now, and it will eventually all be gone. But meanwhile, it is still with us at this point. We're still dealing with it. So it can be helpful to know it's there and to understand how it works, what it's designed to do. To weaken you, cause you fear and emotional pain, self-doubt, self-hatred, guilt, shame, all that stuff. Now, what can get confusing is when you hear or feel a criticism against yourself, sometimes you might think, but wait, yeah, it's a criticism I'm feeling, but it's actually a good point. I really should change this thing about myself. It's unhealthy, not productive, not responsible to do what I'm doing, or whatever. So it's important to realize that certain criticisms you feel or hear inside your mind may be valid. But the thing to ask yourself then is, what is the feeling that comes with that message when you hear or feel it? If you feel a sense of love and true caring with it, and you aren't automatically reacting to it with a lot of hurt or fear, then perhaps it is coming from your higher self or your guides with a constructive purpose. Or maybe it's just your rational mind contemplating something that may be helpful to you. And if so, it's probably something that's good to consider and contemplate at least. However, if you feel a sense of negativity or malevolence with the message, and you immediately react with self-hatred or fear or shame, or that you're somehow being beaten up emotionally, you can be sure it's coming from your inner critic. And you can realize that this message about you is just the programming that is automatically running through the technology designed to weaken you and disconnect you from Source. Have you ever noticed how clever this technology is? How it knows how to take all the beliefs you have adopted over the years about what is good, right, and constructive, and then turn them against you? All the beliefs that you have about what makes a person worthy of love, valuable to society, and deserving of respect are used to make you feel unworthy, selfish, bad, and ashamed. Whenever you can't live up to these beliefs, you are always harshly reminded. Take your spiritual beliefs, for example. Maybe you've decided it's really important to meditate every day, or to be positive in your emotions, or to be good and helpful to other people, or whatever they are. Anytime you are somehow unable to do these things, wham, you're a bad person. You have to fix and change yourself. This is the inner critic at its finest with your spiritual beliefs. It will convince you you are unworthy to ascend, to finally be free. And you probably never will be. There's no hope for you. So, here is the first thing you can do when you become aware of a negative message or feeling inside you that makes you feel bad about yourself. You recognize the inner critic for what it is, a highly advanced AI technology using powerful negative programming that is designed to run and run and run inside of you, creating a maelstrom of negativity within both your mind and your body. It actually has nothing to do with who you are as a multidimensional being of light. You just catch it and recognize it, and then you consciously choose to not react to it. If it's a particular criticism you're hearing in your mind, you choose to not believe it, whatever it is that it's telling you. You do your best to not fall into the guilt or shame or fear it's attempting to draw you into. When you just recognize it for what it is like this, you'll see that the programming tends to kind of get confused and it sort of stutters to a stop. It doesn't know how to respond to this kind of response on your part, not automatically reacting to it. Over time in doing this, you will begin feeling how its pull on you begins to grow weaker and weaker, simply because you're seeing it for what it is and you're choosing not to follow what it's telling you. Now, if you're someone who doesn't generally hear the criticism in your mind, and you just suddenly become aware of the feeling of shame or guilt or unworthiness or whatever in your body, you do the same thing. Sometimes the frequency works so quickly, the message goes directly into your body, and that's when you become aware of it. There's suddenly tightness or pain or constriction in some part of your body. Usually it's in your gut or your chest or maybe in your throat. And you become aware that you're suddenly feeling depressed and heavy, maybe despairing or anxious for no particular reason. If this happens, you need to catch it before you begin collapsing or freezing or trying to get rid of it in some way. You realize, this is the inner critic technology sending frequencies into my body. I don't have to fall into feeling bad about myself. Again, there will be a shift within you when you do this. The frequency running through you just kind of tapers off in its intensity. Now, the important thing about responding in this way, catching yourself from reacting automatically to the frequencies, is that you are taking an important step toward loving yourself. You are stopping this negative alien force and protecting yourself against it, and thereby also beginning to dismantle its power over you. You're learning that you can love yourself despite the fact that you are not perfect. You realize that Like everyone else, you are constantly in the process of evolving into an ever greater, more conscious being of light. In fact, you can realize that there is no one state of perfection that can ever be achieved or that needs to be achieved. There's always more for any of us to learn and experience. And mistakes and wrong turns are naturally expected along the way. This is one way we learn and evolve. There's nothing wrong with them. And this is something the inner critic does not want you to understand. It is designed to keep you feeling you have to be perfect and you have to act perfectly, or you are not a worthy human being. So this understanding is the first step in beginning to dismantle the inner critic's power over you. Recognizing it for what it is and choosing not to automatically believe it and going into guilt and shame. You are learning to let yourself be just as you are. And like I say, this can be the most important way you can begin to love yourself more. So then, the next step is to pay attention to what is going on in your mind. It is probably in turmoil, attempting to solve your pain and discomfort, trying to figure out what to do to get rid of it or to distract you from it at least. Rather than following it in this pursuit, see if you can shift your focus out of your mind and instead direct your attention down into your body. Where do you feel the pain and the emotions? It's likely somewhere, like I say, in your gut or your chest or maybe your throat or a combination of these. Find it and focus your attention there. And maybe put your hand on this part of your body. Feel the emotions as best you can without resisting them. If you've ever done inner child work, this approach is probably familiar to you. You just focus on that younger, vulnerable part of yourself that resides somewhere down in your body. But if this is new to you, you might initially feel resistance to doing this because you're going directly toward where the pain is. And you'll probably want to do anything you can to distance yourself from it. You'll want to somehow distract yourself from it, make it go away, maybe drink or smoke something to deaden the pain. But if you really want to soothe and heal the pain you are experiencing, it is important to go toward the pain, overcoming this resistance through intention and a true desire to help yourself. So let's say at this point you become aware that you're feeling sad or depressed or maybe despairing. So what you do is you ignore what the inner critic may be saying about you and what your mind may be telling you about what you should do to fix it or get rid of it. Instead, you focus down into your body and locate where the discomfort or pain is. And what you do is gently allow this feeling to simply be. You stop resisting it. You take a breath into it. Put your hand on that part of your body. And you don't try to fix anything. Be such a relief. In fact, you don't have to know how to fix it. You don't even have to understand why the emotions are there. All that this frightened, vulnerable part of you needs is for you to be there with it, not judging it, just allowing it to feel what it's feeling. You just breathe love into it. You hold it. At the same time, you stay conscious because you don't want to fall into wallowing in the pain and getting lost in it. You just stay awake and allow it, that all the feelings to just be there and to be loving with it. Or let's say you're feeling angry. You do the same thing. You don't listen to your inner critic telling you about your anger, and especially that you shouldn't be feeling the anger, that there's something wrong with you, it's unspiritual or whatever. And also be careful not to just blast negativity out into the world at someone else either. Again, you just be with that part of yourself, allowing the anger to be there and loving yourself as you are. There's probably good reason you're experiencing the anger. Be gentle and understanding with yourself. Anger usually arises out of a feeling of hurt or fear. It's a type of protective emotion. So be there, allowing all these feelings to just be. So then how about guilt when it arises in you? This can be really painful, especially if you know you have caused pain or harm to someone else, right? Of course, if there's something you can do to acknowledge what you've done and to apologize and make up for the pain you may have helped to bring about, this is the first step to take. But meanwhile, even after doing this, the guilt may still plague you. Be aware that this is definitely the inner critic frequencies just wreaking havoc in your mind and then throughout your body. Again, recognize this. Know that you are not the bad, negative, unworthy person this alien technology is attempting to convince you of. You know this. You're someone who's made a mistake, maybe even an unconscious, unintentional one. And you are, like everyone, still learning and evolving. And you're doing this in a very difficult, controlled, and manipulated third-dimensional reality in which it's very challenging on many levels to be aware of what you're doing and the consequences of it. If you did something you wish you hadn't, there's probably fear involved, an attempt to protect yourself in some way. Have understanding and compassion for yourself. Allow yourself to be imperfect. You are doing the very best you know how. So then there's, let's say, self-doubt. This is another really painful emotion and state of mind to experience, right? Again, if this feeling arises within you and it's very painful, you can be sure this is something the inner critic technology is producing in you. See if you can catch this. Realize that, yeah, there maybe is something you need to get clarity on, and you maybe need to do something to change this. But the emotional pain involved in self-doubt, the fear and self-judgment are not necessary. These are being caused by the negative frequencies running through your mind, attempting to weaken you and convince you that you are wrong, bad, and worthless. Do not fall ever into believing this. Now, if it's anxiety or fear you become aware of, this can be somewhat more difficult to do. You just want the feeling gone, right? It can sometimes feel unbearable if it's, anxiety that just goes on and on. But it can be done. What you do is you just start breathing into where the emotion is, wherever you feel it in your body. Stay focused with as much love for yourself as possible. Within a few minutes, you'll likely begin feeling a greater relaxation move into your body. Just keep breathing, taking bigger and longer breaths, as much as you can. Focusing on your breath can also assist you in staying with your body and out of your mind, which is really important. Now, I realize that doing any of this for any of your emotions can be difficult at first if you've never done this, because if the emotions that are arising are so unpleasant, you just want to get rid of them. You want to fix them, heal them, change them, somehow get them out of you. Of course, this is exactly what the inner critic technology is designed to make you feel: at war with yourself. Self-hatred, guilt, shame, fear. Quick, drink some alcohol. Take a drug, eat some sugar, in order to shove the feeling down into your unconscious. Or have a fight with your partner, kick the dog. Or, if you're a dedicated light worker, do something fast to heal yourself, change yourself. You're not okay as you are. Is any of this familiar? So I realized that this approach to negative emotions, of accepting them and loving yourself unconditionally, no matter what you feel, rather than trying to get rid of them and immediately trying to heal yourself, is probably not new to you. You've read it and heard it and probably tried to practice it before, but often we need to be reminded, right? The inner critic technology is so powerful. It can make the idea that there's something wrong and bad about you feel accurate and right. You just gotta keep remembering, this is not a part of you. It's alien technology. And with all the uncomfortable emotions that arise, rather than immediately trying to get rid of them or change them or heal them, you need to first find that part of yourself in your body that's feeling them and consciously and compassionately be with it. Otherwise, if you try to immediately go into trying to heal yourself, what you may seem to accomplish will probably not last. Acceptance and unconditional love for yourself must come first. You need to feel that wounded part of yourself relaxing and letting go to some degree first, and then begin doing other things to bring in more healing. And one thing you can do, if you've been doing this and you're there with that part of yourself, is you can begin talking to this little one in you. Kind of like you might a young child or a frightened pet, in a soft and caring voice. And then hearing what it has to say to you. You don't have to have answers to its pain. You really just need to be there and listen compassionately. And you can go further and, call in your higher self, or angels, or ascended masters to be with you. And they're there for both of you. And you just listen to what they might say to you. You feel their love for you. You listen to their wisdom. Or you might just feel their presence. You might be surprised to discover how the problem can be resolved by just doing this. And what you can do further to bring comfort and understanding to this wounded part of yourself. And you can do other things like bringing it up into you, into your spiritual heart. Bring it in there to bathe in the violet flame. Whatever images come to you. I'm sure you've learned a lot of these over the years. And in doing these kinds of things, you'll see that wounded and frightened part of yourself will eventually not only relax and let go, it may simply release the fear and anger and grief into the light. It's just gone. It'll just happen. It can be such an amazing release when this happens. But if not, if the thing is really deep and ongoing, it won't much matter because this younger, more vulnerable part of you finally feels you are there with it, unconditionally holding it with love, not judging it. And this is what makes all the difference. Remember, feeling negative emotions is not bad or unspiritual. They need to be allowed and paid attention to. They're here for you to experience and learn from. They're part of your evolutionary process. And when you can learn to do just this initial step with your emotions as they arise, you'll find that your frequency is automatically rising. You'll feel freer, happier, more relaxed, and able to experience greater joy and inner peace and a greater sense of personal empowerment. You just feel stronger inside. These are all qualities of fifth dimensional consciousness. You'll no longer be plagued by the frequencies of the inner critic. It'll just be like an old machine that just keeps chugging along, kind of like an old refrigerator. But it just kind of becomes vague background noise, something that's easily ignored. And you will then be more successful in using any healing mode you feel you need to use, whether it's one you do for yourself or you go to a healer for. The healing you experience will be more effective and work more quickly because you have reached into the core of the matter first, loving yourself unconditionally despite the emotional pain, the guilt, the self-hatred, the shame, the fear, any of it that you've been experiencing. And this makes all the difference. And another very important benefit of responding to your emotional pain in this way is that you won't be depending on other people in your life to give you unconditional love, because you're already giving it to yourself. If they do give it to you, it's a bonus, but it's not necessary for you to feel a sense of feeling valued and lovable. You've got your own love, and that really is enough in the end. You can find out. Meanwhile, you can also remember the good news that with the ever-increasing high frequencies that are now flooding the planet, this negative programming technology that has plagued humanity for eons of time is finally weakening and losing its power anyway. As I've said, the forces behind the technology are weakening because they cannot exist beyond the fourth dimension. And the Earth and humanity are now rapidly rising in frequency into a much higher one. So their technology, which you may know actually extends far beyond the device that's been called the inner critic, is all beginning to collapse and lose its power. None of it can go with us into the fifth dimension. So knowing all this can be really helpful as we continue to trudge along on our path of ascension. Loving ourselves unconditionally is perhaps our main task at this point, and learning how to handle the inner critic technology is a huge step in doing this and shifting into fifth dimensional freedom. So as always, just keep going when it gets hard, one step in front of the other. You will eventually begin feeling clearer and freer and more able to trust the new energies coming onto the planet to help you shift ever faster into a much higher frequency. Just keep conscious and keep loving yourself just as you are, as much as you can, no matter what. Many blessings and much love to you.